everyone, it's Destiny, and today we're going to be doing tier list review where we review the recent changes made on the tier list and we all come together to just share our thoughts. And before we get into today's video, I would love to know your favorite team to play in Honkai Star Rail. Lastly, if you enjoy videos like these, do make sure to subscribe to see more content from me, leave a like to support today's video, and now let's get straight into it. So here we have the Pride 1 tier list, and there has been some changes made since the last time we reviewed the tier list. Which the last time we reviewed the tier list was actually shortly after Evernight's release, so I didn't really talk too much about Heng on the tier list, but today I thought I can go over Cyrene, Heng, and just any spots on the tier list that I feel like maybe could be higher or lower. There is also updates in the changelog as well, and real quick for those that are not aware of how the Pride 1 tier list works, for tier 0 that is the highest tier a character can be, while tier 5 would be the lowest the character could be rated. So starting off with Cyrene, she is in tier 0 for all 3 categories, which if I'm not mistaken, Cyrene was actually 0.5 when her banner came out, which if we take a look at the changelog, she did go from 0.5 to tier 0, and they mentioned how they placed her conservatively due to how she was perceived during her pre-release cycle among the community, and now the players have had a chance to play her, and they have their first round of data. It's clear that for well-invested Chrysos Heirs team, she is a notable upgrade when built around correctly. So that's what it states for as to why they increased her to tier 0, which I'd love to know if you all agree with her placement, which she does have the partner tag, and the reason why she has the partner tag, especially because this is an E0 Cyrene, is in relation to the Chrysos Heirs, more so looking at her placement when she is paired alongside a character like Castris, a character like Evernight, Finan, Aglaya, Anaxa, Hyacine, and so on. So it's only considering the Chrysos Heirs for her placement, which is why she has the partner tag. If you were to consider her alongside a character that isn't a Chrysos Heir, for example, let's say you put Cyrene on a Jingliu team and you also have an E0 Cyrene, there is definitely better choices that you can put in your support slot rather than Cyrene for a team that does not include a Chrysos Heir damage dealer or just Chrysos Heirs in general. So for her placement, that is why she has the partner tag, which I could see why she is in the Apex character category when you are considering her alongside the Chrysos Heirs, of course. And I do think it's interesting that they did increase her from 0.5 to tier 0 pretty quick, which in my personal opinion, I do feel like if a character starts off in, let's say 0.5, right? Or even maybe tier 1, whatever it may be, I feel like the best time to potentially increase them could be maybe more so near the end of their banner, or even looking into the next patch, which is going to be 3.8, looking to potentially increase a character then, just to get about a patch worth of testing for a character to firmly determine whether or not they should be in the highest tier possible. That's just my personal opinion when it comes to them increasing her as quick as they did on the tier list. I do personally think Cyrene has very powerful benefits for the Chrysos Heirs though, which the general buffs that she would give would be damage boost for the team as well as true damage, but then of course she has all of the unique buffs that she provides every Chrysos Heir individually, and some of these buffs also are effective for the entire battle, which now allows you to also apply that buff to another Chrysos Heir on the team. For example, let's say you're using a Castris and Evernight team with Cyrene, you can apply the buff to Evernight as well as Castris, and this buff will be effective for the entire battle. And Cyrene's buffs catering to the DPS Chrysos Heirs are very useful for their kits. For example, in the case of Mydei, he's going to be able to unleash more instances of Godslayer Be God now. In the case of Anaxa, he'll be able to act immediately when Cyrene's buff is used on him, and the bounces from his skill will also increase by 3, resulting in more damage output from Anaxa. Plus, you can also combo this with Cyrene. You will want to have as many Chrysos Heirs as possible in order to get as many points of recollection in the beginning of the fight. Since if you have a full team of Chrysos Heirs, you'll be able to begin battle with an additional 6 points of recollection, which will nicely assist with being able to use her ultimate within the 0 cycle. And through my personal testings, I have been able to successfully do this with Finan teams, Mydei teams, Anaxa teams, Of course, with full Memo Sprite teams or teams that have multiple Memo Sprite characters, this will definitely be easier to do when it comes to getting as many points of recollection as possible in order to use her ultimate within the zero cycle, due to the fact that Memo Sprite characters do not consume future, which future is consumed whenever an ally takes action. And when you consume future, then you'll be able to get 1 point of recollection for Cyrene. Now, when you consume future, you won't be able to get future back until after Cyrene takes action. However, since Memo Sprites do not consume future, you can continuously get points of recollection for Cyrene through Memo Sprite characters, which is why a character like Hyacine is incredibly powerful alongside Cyrene, as Little Ika will be able to continuously get points of recollection for your Cyrene team, resulting in you being able to ensure that you use her ultimate within the zero cycle, and also just having an easier time with using her ultimate more frequently even past that. After you use Cyrene's first ultimate, which will consume 24 points of recollection, then you will have to use 12 points of recollection in order to use it again, which will now allow you to either unleash an AoE attack onto enemies or apply a buff to an ally. In the case of a team like Mydei and Anaxa, for instance, where their buff is single usage, for example with Mydei, it would be the additional instance of Godslayer be God, and in the case of Anaxa, it would be him being able to immediately act again, and then also having the bounces from his skill increased, as well as some other buffs too. Being able to use Cyrene's ultimate frequently on those two characters will be very useful, just to highly take advantage of the unique buff that she provides for them. Overall though, for those that have numerous Chrysos Heirs on their account, Cyrene can definitely be worthwhile, especially when it comes to being able to put your Sunday potentially on another team, or even putting your Tribby on another team. So in the case of Tribby, let's say you already had her on your Casteress team, now you can put Tribby on your other team, as Cyrene can take the place of Tribby on your Casteress team. Or let's say you were using Sunday on your Anaxa team. You can now put Sunday on your other team instead, and now have Cyrene take his place on your Anaxa team. There's multiple cases where Cyrene will actually allow you to free up some of your support slots to put them on your other team, which if you're considering the endgame modes, you do need 2 teams, so this will be very useful for those that do not have majority of the supports in the game, or even in the case of Anomaly Arbitration where you need 3 teams, this will be very useful there, as you would have to spread out your supports even more in that mode. Now, for those that don't have many Chrysos Heirs at all on their account, this is where Cyrene's value is not really there, especially if you were considering an E0 Cyrene. She won't be able to provide as much for an account in comparison to picking up a different support that is able to provide more universal buffs for numerous teams in the game. And when it comes to all of the banners in 3.7, I have made a who you should pull video, which the #1 character I recommended from that video was Hyacine. Even if you are considering to pull Cyrene, Hyacine is an excellent option to put on a Cyrene team, as I mentioned, with Little Ika being able to continuously get points of recollection for Cyrene. And Hyacine overall just works very nicely on numerous teams. She's able to heal frequently, she is able to deal adequate amounts of damage herself thanks to Little Ika, and so on. She's definitely one of the best sustaining characters in the game, is definitely worthy of her tier 0 placement in my personal opinion. And then we also have Don Heng, which is an excellent free-to-play sustain that has an even stronger synergy if you do have Sunday on the team, since Don Heng is going to be able to provide one character on the team with a summon called Soul Dragon. If you have a team with Sunday and Don Heng, this now results in Sunday being able to give the full buffs from his kit to the character that has the Soul Dragon summon attached to them. So as a result, these two can make a very powerful synergy, but even without Sunday in mind, Don Heng will still be able to provide powerful shields and also is able to provide a nice attack buff and so on. He works very nicely in the case of attack scaling characters. I do highly recommend building him if you haven't already and are struggling with sustainability on your account. Now, when it comes to the tier list as a whole, I would say when it comes to tier 0, it is pretty filled up here for the DPS section as well as the support section. I'm also not too sure if honestly for tier 0.5, if I would fully agree with all the characters that are placed together here. I do feel like maybe some of them could be placed around a bit differently. And for the tier 0 characters, this is also where, once again, it is pretty filled up. which I'd love to know all of your thoughts if you agree with some of the characters up in tier 0 or if you would drop some of them. Now this is considering E0 S1 for each of these characters, so I'd just love to know all of your thoughts regarding that. I think for me personally, I have said this in a couple of my last tier list videos, which some people have agreed and some have disagreed. But I did say that I felt like Sparkle should potentially have the partner tag due to the fact that she went up on the tier list primarily due to the release of Archer. Now you can use Sparkle with Finan, which I'm sure her placement does consider this as well. However, when looking at majority of the top tier damage dealers, most of these damage dealers here would definitely prefer a different support overall. And in the case of Archer in particular, he does have the partner tag, however Sparkle does not. And it also accounts for the fact that Saridra has the partner tag, but Sparkle does not have the partner tag whatsoever. So I'd love to know all of your thoughts as well on that, if you feel like an E0 S1 Sparkle should have the partner tag, especially considering the fact that she went up on the tier list thanks to Archer's release. Because if I'm not mistaken, prior to Archer releasing, she was in the meta character category, but she was either in tier 1 or maybe 1.5. I'm not too sure which category she was fully in, but she definitely wasn't in the Apex character category. So I thought I would just point that out real quick. And I'm also really curious how this tier list might actually shift in either version 3.8 or once we get to version 4.0 and then we potentially have a new path coming out. I would love to see the differences in the tier list by then as well. If we'll get a similar effect where a lot of the version 2 characters kind of just went down over time. A lot of the version 2 characters were in the Apex character category and then they went to the meta character category, with some exceptions, of course. Some of the version 2.x characters or even version 1.x characters are still up here, of course, but more so the damage dealers, for example, Acheron, Fei Xiao, Yun Li, Firefly, Rappa, Boot Hill. I'm curious if the same thing is going to happen once we get deeper into version 4.0. If some of the damage dealers that are up here in tier 0 and tier 0.5 are also going to have a similar effect of going a little bit lower on the tier list, or if the characters might end up being a bit more balanced where there might just be even more damage dealers up here in tier 0 and tier 0.5. I'm really curious to see what ends up happening with that in particular, but that'll mostly be it for today's video. I primarily just wanted to go over my thoughts regarding Cyrene here, as well as on Heng, also giving some thoughts on Hyacine as well in relation to the 3.7 banners, and also just how powerful of a sustain she is. And I would love to know for this particular tier list, if you agree with majority of the placements, or if there's some placements where you would potentially bump a character up a tier or two, or even lower a character, whatever it may be. And if you enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing, leaving a like on the video, and I hope to see you all next time. Peace.